Hello, welcome to the broadcast. I'm Billy Stewart, Assistant Pastor here at Solid Rock Tabernacle, 1325 Rudy Road in Alma, Arkansas. I just want to take a minute to extend this personal invitation to you to come and join us in one of our exciting spirit-filled services. Our Sunday school begins at 9 a.m. Our Sunday morning worship begins at 10 a.m. and our Sunday evening worship begins at 6 p.m. We also have an exciting Wednesday evening Bible study where we are going through the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse. I think that you'll really enjoy it. Come and join us, won't you? 1325 Rudy Road here in Alma, Arkansas. Hey, we'll save a seat for you. And now, let's join our service already in progress.
All right. Y'all remember where we left off last week? What they were supposed to do. Yeah, 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 yeah. Uh huh. Yeah. Okay. Dump their ashes somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into Leviticus chapter 11 tonight. We're getting into going into something new. We've been talking about a lot of the law that pertain to the sacrifice and everything else. Now we're moving into something different. Now we're going to move into the laws concerning the food. All right. So Leviticus chapter 11, verses 1 to 8. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying unto them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parteth the hoof, and is cloven-hoofed, or cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that shall ye eat. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew of the cud, or them that divide the hoof, as the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof. He is unclean to you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof. He is unclean to you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And the swine, though he divide the hoof, and be cloven-footed, yet he cheweth not the cud. He is unclean to you. Of their flesh ye shall not eat, and their carcasses shall ye not touch. They are unclean to you. So this section here is beginning, the next 5 chapters is going to be about ceremonial impurity. Right? So we moved up the first 11 chapters have been talking about the law of sacrifice primarily, consecration of the priests, those type of things. Now we're getting into what is pure and impure as far as ceremonially, and the separation from impurity. Now God spoke to both Moses and Aaron this time. Remember, in the last chapter was the first time that God spoke directly to Aaron. Now God is speaking to Moses and to Aaron, because it involved 2 things. It involved both the government, which is represented by Moses, okay, and the priesthood, represented by Aaron, okay. After 10 chapters of the law dealing with priests and sacrifices, here we come to laws dealing with the ordinary and everyday life of all the people, okay. The other sacrifices, we're talking mostly about the priests and the priesthood. Now we're talking about the ordinary people, something that everybody has. God's interested in every detail of their lives. He's interested in every detail of our lives. But he sets it down and he issues commands to the children of Israel he's getting so involved in their life that he's telling them what they can and what they cannot eat. Okay? So he's getting pretty specific with them. And the laws God gave to Israel dealt with a lot of aspects in life. Okay? And here, this section begins with the laws about what animals they can eat and what they're not permitted to eat. And God gave these laws to the children of Israel. Now get this, he gave these laws to the children of Israel, not to humanity in general. These were the laws for Israel, not the Gentiles. Okay? Even in the days of Noah, there was a distinction between clean and unclean animals. If you remember, when the ark, they said, you take 7 of the clean and 2 of the unclean. So it's, it's wound up being 14 and 4. But anyway, there was a distinction between what was clean and what was not clean. Okay? But that what was clean and what was not clean may have strictly been for the purpose of sacrifice rather than dietary concerns. But still, there was an early basis for these laws. Okay? Now, the reason for the dietary laws, which is what we're looking at here, not really clearly presented as to why God's given these dietary laws. There's been a lot of suggestions as to reasons why they have the dietary law. Okay. Anybody have any idea what some of the reasons why God might have given the dietary laws? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for hygienic reasons, like that. But the suggested reasons why God might have given the dietary laws fall into several categories: the symbolic, ethical, aesthetic, hygienic, morphological, and theological criteria. So these are all some of the areas that it falls into as to why he might have given those. But from all of these, the purpose of the dietary laws can really be summarized into 3 points, right? The dietary laws gave the Israelites an opportunity to demonstrate obedience to God. Overall, God's intent was to make Israel a holy nation. And not only just a holy nation, but a holy nation that was separated from all other nations. Right? And obedience to God was a big part of it. Okay? Not only their bellies, complete obedience to God. Okay? Now, just as the first law that God gave to humanity, think about this, had to do with what they could and could not eat. The first law, the first commandment that God gave to Adam and Eve that's recorded in the Bible was what they could and they could not eat. All the trees in the garden you can eat, but this one you can't eat, okay? So you can have that, but you can't have that. So these laws were given to Israel kind of as a test of their obedience and separation to God. And obviously, the first commandment, Eve failed it miserably. Okay? So, God's given them a chance to be obedient to him once again. Next, the dietary law separated the Israelites from their Canaan or Gentile pagan neighbors. Right? This limited the true fellowship and connection an obedient Israel could have with its surrounding people. In other words, what they could socialize and do with these other people was limited. Okay? You can't eat the same things that they eat. You can't do the same things that they do. So it limited their, because, they don't have anything in common. Why in the world would you want to hang around with somebody you don't have anything in common with? Okay? So it was a chance to regulate and limit the Israelites' connection with people who did not worship and obey Yahweh. Okay? Also, some of these animals declared unclean for eating were animals that were idolized in pagan religions. Okay? Some of these things that they said that you can't eat, that God said you can't eat, they were actually pagan. The pagans would idolize them. They would make idols to them. So God says you can't eat them because they represent pagan idols. Okay? Finally, the dietary laws helped to protect the health of the Jewish people. You were saying many of the diseases and problems were prevented by obedience to these dietary laws. Okay? This understanding is attacked a lot of times based on thinking that if that was the case, then it makes no sense for God to allow the eating of these animals under the new covenant. Because you can eat those under the new covenant. Thank goodness. Okay? Because, they start out, they start out, no bacon, I'm out. Sorry, I'm gone right there. No catfish, I'm gone. I'm out. That's just, you can't. You could eat the split hoof if they chewed the cud. Yeah. Yeah, you could eat cows. Yeah. You could eat cows. You just couldn't eat cows and cheese at the same time. But we'll see that later on. But you couldn't eat pork. You couldn't eat fish without scales. You couldn't eat reptile. There were a lot of things that you couldn't eat that God said, no, you can't eat. Okay? But, what some people will say is, well, if God was concerned about the dietary health or the health of the people, then why is he allowing it in the new covenant? Well, it's reasonable to think that in the period, the 1500-year period, from the giving of the law of Moses to the first century church, there was a lot better understanding of what made some meat dangerous and other meat safe. Okay? Just like we have now. In the 1500, 2000 years since the first century church, we've learned a lot of stuff about how to prepare food and prepare meat to where it's not dangerous to us anymore. Okay? Nobody is going to go out and eat a raw chicken or, eat a medium well pork chop or a medium rare pork chop. You're not going to do that. Okay? Not supposed to do that. Okay? It's also reasonable to think that by protecting the health of the Jewish nation through the dietary laws, God ensured the continuation and the prosperity of his covenant people as well. Okay? Now, the dietary laws began with the animals most commonly eaten. The ones that are most commonly eaten are mammals that are land-based. Okay? So, for these animals, the rule was simple. All right? God wanted to make it pretty easy for them to understand. If an animal has a divided hoof, cloven hoof, okay, not a single hoof like a horse, anything like that, okay, but if it had a split hoof, a cloven hoof, and it chewed the cud, then it could be eaten. Okay? So that's pretty easy. Yes. The cud, that's where they eat it and kind of burp it back up and eat it again, and then it's yeah. Yeah, well, that doesn't necessarily make multiple stomachs because, like rabbits and stuff like that, they chew the cud too. They just chew it all the time. They're always. That's why rabbits are always. Always see rabbits just chewing and eating things. Okay, but I know that's right after eating pizza. That's exactly what everybody wanted to hear. But hey, now many animals are mentioned that fit one of the requirements. They chew the cud, or the other requirement, they have a cloven hoof, but not both. Huh? And they had to meet both criteria. For example, the camel, the coney, and the hare. Okay, what's a coney? That's a very good question. Okay, a coney is it's a the some people call it a rock larynx. It's a rodent, basically, is what it is. It's like a big. It's a huge. I'm trying to think of kind of like a huge hedgehog looking type of thing. It's a big creature, but it lives in the rocks and it chews the cuds. It's a rodent. So the camel, that coney, the hare, the rabbit, they all chew the cud, right? But they don't have a divided hoof. Eh? They've got paws. Eh? So, since they've got paws, even though they chew the cud, they're considered unclean and are not to be eaten. Not that anybody would want to eat a camel, but I guess if you got, I guess if you got hungry enough, you could eat it. Okay. I've never had camel either, and I don't really care to, but it's. Additionally, it was talking here the swine. Swine's got a cloven hoof, a divided hoof, right? But it doesn't chew the cud. All right? So, since it has got a cloven hoof, but it doesn't chew the cud, then it's considered non-kosher. You can't eat it. All right? And if an animal was considered unclean, it could not be used for food. Yet, got some of my Scottish coming out there. Could not be used for food. Yet, additionally, you couldn't touch it. You couldn't touch an unclean animal. Whether it was alive or dead, you couldn't touch it. All right? Because that would make you unclean. Right? And nobody wanted to be unclean. Right? Now, there's a difference between, which we'll get into in a minute, but there's a difference between being ceremonially unclean and unclean because of sin. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All right. Verses 9 to 12. These shall ye eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever hath fins and scales in the water, in the seas, and in the rivers, them shall ye eat. And all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, of all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination unto you. They shall be even an abomination unto you. Ye shall not eat of their flesh, but ye shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whatsoever hath no fins nor scales in the water, that shall be an abomination unto you. All right? Rules pretty simple again. For the fish, we've got the meat. Now we're getting the fish. Okay? And we're going to get into the poultry in just a second, so don't worry. But now we got the meat. We got the meat. Now we look at the fish. Any creature that has both fins and scales were kosher to eat. It could be eaten. Okay? No shrimp, no lobster, no oysters. Sharks, no, don't have scales. Eh? Huh? No eels. Nope. Catfish, nope, no catfish. No catfish. So see, that's number 2. That's 2 strikes. I'm out of here now. I can't eat pork and I can't eat catfish. I wouldn't make a good Jew. Okay? So, now there's evidence that fish without scales were also avoided by the Romans and the Egyptians as well. Okay? Um, these types of fish are generally considered as scavengers. Okay? Yeah, that's what a catfish is. If you knew how a catfish eat, most people wouldn't eat catfish. Eh? Is catfish are some nasty creatures. Hey, well, they live in the mud. They're bottom feeders. Okay. There's good catfish. You know, you get yeah. But since they roam at the bottom of the sea, okay, there were also they were also carriers of several different kinds of parasites as well. And their fish was not as well cooked as we do, so they didn't get rid of the parasites. Okay? So on this principle, most fishes were considered clean. Okay? You go out and eat alligator gar if you wanted to. Okay? Not that I'd want to eat alligator gar, but yeah, I'll eat an alligator, but not an alligator gar. Okay? So most fish were considered, yes. Yes. We'll talk about that in just a minute too. Okay? So most fishes were considered clean, except, like I said, fish like catfish, okay, because it doesn't have any scales on it. Any kind of shellfish is considered unclean. Shrimp, lobster, crawfish. you know, yeah, clams, oysters, eh? All of these, because like clams, crabs, oysters, lobsters, okay, they none of them have fins and scales. So no escargot, yeah. So under the dietary laws given to Israel, these were regarded as an abomination. You couldn't eat them. Okay? They could not be eaten. All right. Verses 13 to 19. And these are they which ye shall have in abomination among the fowls. Okay, we had the meat, then we had the fish, now we're talking about the poultry. They shall not be eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, and the ossifrage, and the osprey, and the vulture, and the kite after his kind, every raven after his kind, and the owl, and the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind, and the little owl, and the cormorant, and the great owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gear eagle, and the stork, the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. Okay, bat's not really a bird, but it's a flying creature. Okay, all right. So, well, no, not really. Can't think any of them I'd want to eat. Definitely ain't going to eat a buzzard or a vulture or anything like that. But there was no rule given to determine if a bird was clean or unclean. Instead, he said God gave specific birds. Said these birds can't be eaten. And there's 20 of them in all that were not allowed to be eaten. Okay? They're all mentioned as being unclean. So they're forbidden in eating. Now, the common thread among most of these birds that are there is that they are either predators or they are scavengers. Okay? The owl, all of them, the eagle, the hawk, those are all predators. Okay? The raven, the crow, the buzzard, the vulture, those are all scavengers. Okay? So these birds were considered unclean. All right? It's good to have, they had a list of the birds, not on the fish. All right, verses 20 to 23. All fowls that creep, going upon all fours, shall be an abomination unto you. Yet these may ye eat of every flying, creeping thing that goeth upon all fours, and have legs above their feet, to leap withal upon the earth. Even these of them that you may eat, the locust after his kind, and the bald locust after his kind, and the beetle after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. But all other flying, creeping things which have 4 feet shall be an abomination unto you. So now we're talking about insects. Okay? We're not talking about meat. We're not talking about fish. We're not talking about poultry anymore. Now we're talking about bugs. Chocolate covered grasshoppers, perfectly legal. Huh? Hey. And a locust, yeah. Among the insect, any creeping insect was considered unclean, such as like ants or grubs. You couldn't eat chocolate covered ants. Those were not any good. All right. Yet, if they were flying insects with legs jointed above their feet, they could be eaten. All right. Now, we think, but it was not uncommon to eat those in those days. Yeah, and it's even in many areas of the world today. There are people will eat different insects, different kinds. I'm not going to eat any insects, but there are some of them that do. Yeah. And good examples of a clean insect included the locust, the cricket, the grasshopper. Okay. Now, notice what it said. It said that creeps on all fours. Right? Huh? Insects have 6 legs. Okay. So some people think this means that Moses was uninformed, that he didn't understand that most insects have 6 legs. Eh? They do. Okay? But that's not what they're talking about here. That term, the phrase that they use, creeps on all fours, doesn't necessarily mean that it references only the 4 legs. Okay? It's a figure of speech. This reference is evidently talking about their movement, how they move. Yes. Yeah. 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 So it's not that Moses didn't understand that insects have 6 legs. Okay. Wasn't that he was ignorant in any way. Okay. The problem is it was a figure. It's a figure of speech. This is creeps around. Looks like he's creeping around on all 4. You know. All right. Verses 24 to 28. And for these ye shall be unclean. Whosoever toucheth the carcass of them shall be unclean until the even. In other words, if you touch something that is unclean, you are unclean until that evening. And whosoever beareth aught of the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the even. The carcasses of every beast which divideth the hoof and is not cloven-footed, nor cheweth the cud, are unclean unto you. Every one that toucheth them shall be unclean. And whatsoever goeth upon his paws among all manner of the beasts that go on all 4, those are unclean to you. Whoso toucheth their carcasses shall be unclean until the even. And he that beareth the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening. They are unclean unto you. Okay? So, unclean animals, when dead, you couldn't just leave them in the community to rot. Okay? You had to do something with them. They had to be disposed of somehow. And you can't eat them, so you had to do something with them. But the people who dispose of these unclean animals had to deal with their uncleanness because they've touched the animals. So since they touched them, they're unclean. So what they did was they were told that they had to wash, and then they were basically put in a short quarantine until the evening. Again, this unclean is ceremonially unclean. And it's not to be confused, and it's not the same as being unclean in a state of sin. It's totally different. Okay? You see the difference there. No sacrifice was required to remedy the condition of ceremonial uncleanness. If you were unclean because of sin, you had to remedy that by making a sacrifice, taking it to the priest, making the sacrifice. If you were just ceremonially unclean because you touched something that was dead or an unclean animal, if you walked over and, slapped your camel, you were considered unclean until the evening. Okay? So that's they didn't actually, believe it or not, they didn't actually use camels for pack animals like are used today. Okay? They used oxen and cattle to do that. Okay? But it was an unclean animal. Okay? But if they touched one of them, they were in a state of ceremonial impurity. And it had to be addressed. They had to take care of this. And the way they took care of it, you wash your hands, you wash yourself, you wash your clothes, you clean up, and then you stay away from everybody. You don't touch anybody. You leave, back off. You stay out of the way of everybody until the evening. And then once the evening came, then you were fine. Okay? You go back to going out and having fun with everybody. All right? Yeah, but this was not a sinful part of being impure. This was not a sinful uncleanliness. This was simply a ceremonial uncleanliness. That's all it was. Okay? No? Yeah. Yeah. That's true. You don't hear much about pet cats either, but I mean Egyptians. Yeah. Yeah. The Egyptians treated cats like they were gods, and believe me, the cats have not forgotten that. Yeah. All right, verses 29 and 30. These also shall be unclean unto you, the creeping things that creep upon the earth, the weasel and the mouse and the tortoise after his kind, and the ferret and the chameleon and the lizard and the snail and the mole. Okay? So this group of critters that are there, right? It included mammals such as the mole and the mouse. They're rodents, all right? These are also excluded based on the requirements of verses 1 to 8 as well. But they're repeated here for clarity, just so everybody knows that, no, you can't eat them. Okay? In addition, these reptiles that it mentioned could not be eaten. All right? So you couldn't eat those either. Now, I don't know about rattlesnake, because I don't think they had rattlesnake back there. But rattlesnake, good. If you cook it right, it's good. Yeah, a rattlesnake can be pretty good. All right, verses 31 to 38. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Whosoever doth touch them when they be dead shall be unclean until the even. And upon whatsoever any of them when they are dead doth fall, it shall be unclean, whether it be any vessel of wood or raiment or skin or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the even, so it shall be cleansed. In other words, if critter gets in your dishes, then you got to wash them and set them up somewhere. They're unclean to the evening. And every earthen vessel whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and ye shall break it. So your good china, if they touched it, you got to bust it. You can't keep the good china. Yeah. So if it's any kind of earthen vessel, earthenware vessel, you got to break it. Right? Of all meat which may be eaten, that on which such water cometh shall be unclean, and all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. So if you put food on it after it's unclean, then that food's unclean. Even the food was clean when you cooked it, it's unclean now, and you can't eat it. And everything whereupon any part of their carcasses falleth shall be unclean, whether it be oven or ranges for pots, they shall be broken down, and for they are unclean, and shall be unclean unto you. Nevertheless, a fountain or pit, wherein there is plenty of water, shall be clean, but that which toucheth their carcasses shall be unclean. If any part of the carcass falls upon the sowing seed which is to be sown, it shall be clean. But if any water be put upon the seed, any part of their carcass fall up thereon, it shall be unclean unto you. So, from a hygienic standpoint, these laws were pretty important. Basically, it's telling you that if any of the rodents, any of this stuff, gets in your food, gets on your plates, gets into your seeds, gets into any of this stuff, no, then it's unclean. You can't use it. Now, if they fall in the well and drown, that's okay. You can take them out of the well and throw that away. And the well is, the well's okay because there's a lot of water in the well. But if you have just a vessel of water that you filled with water and the mouse crawls in it and dies, well, then you got to get rid of the water and the vessel. All right? So, all right? So these are all pretty important. They require, for example, that if a rodent crawled inside a bowl, the bowl had to be broken. You had to get rid of it. Okay? Therefore, any disease that the rodent carried couldn't be passed on to anyone who used the bowl. Okay? Well, if it's a well, if there's a lot of water, it says if there's a lot of water in a well, it's going to circulate around. So that's not anything to worry about. Okay? Yeah, just call it soup. Okay? Now, some things could be cleaned. All right? Some things you could cleanse. And you cleanse them by washing them in water. But contaminated food or drink or anything like that had to be thrown out. Yeah. Okay. No. Cooking tools were unclean if they were contaminated with dead, unclean animals. Okay. And what these laws did is they gave the Israelite household a reason to prevent pests and creeping things from getting into their house. Okay. This is a way to make sure that you don't have any mice. You keep the mice out. Okay? So these laws also promoted a general state of cleanliness inside the Israelite home. Right? All right. Verses 39 to 40. If any beast of which ye may eat die, that he toucheth the carcass thereof shall be unclean until the even. And he that eateth of the carcass of it shall wash his clothes, and be unclean till the even. He also that beareth the carcass of it shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. Okay? So these laws tend to appear, tend to be for the natural death of an animal. If the animal dies on its own, then it's considered unclean, right? Even if it's an animal that you're allowed to eat. If it dies on its own, then you're not allowed to eat it. If you touch it, it's unclean. If you eat it, it's unclean. Okay? Well, I don't know. Yeah. 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 No, ain't gonna eat no roadkill. Now there are some. There's some. I think it's Alabama actually has a law that if you the roadkill can't be any more than so many hours old. If it's less than so many hours old, you can take it and you know. But we say we wouldn't eat roadkill. All right. All right. Let me do this then. We say I wouldn't eat roadkill. You couldn't get me to eat roadkill. What about somebody hits a deer?
You go and you take that deer and you butcher it, but you're not going to want it.
you know.
As cream.
Yeah.
Cream's clean. And the stomach wall, the intestines,
There's a lot of that stuff.
and the bruising of
Yeah.
blood. Yeah.
A lot of that meat on that. You're only thing you're gonna be able to do is cut it up or grind it up into hamburger meat if you're gonna get any kind of meat out of it. But there are people that will, if they hit a deer, they'll take that deer. Yeah. Of course, most of the time, if they hit a deer, it doesn't kill it. Somebody has to come out and kill the deer. But it's we say we don't eat roadkill, but but okay. Yeah. So these laws that they were talking about there, those apply to the natural death of a clean animal, not the butchering of it for food, and not for the death, not by killing them for a sacrifice either. Okay. Those handling such carcasses that they were dead were ceremonially unclean until the evening. Okay. Yeah, it's just for the rest of the day because their day started in the evening instead of the morning. Okay. All right. Verses 41 to 43. And every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth shall be an abomination; it shall not be eaten. Whatsoever goeth on the belly, and whatsoever goeth upon all fours, or whatsoever hath more feet among all creeping things that creep upon the earth, them shall ye not eat, for they are an abomination. Ye shall not make yourself abominable with any creeping thing that creepeth, neither shall ye make yourself unclean with them, that ye should be defiled thereby. Okay? No snakes. No centipedes, no snakes, stuff like that. Yeah. Okay? Now, of course, many of these animals are considered back in verses 29 and 30, but for clarity here, they're reemphasized. Right? And it was considered highly sinful and even idolatrous in many ways to eat of these forbidden things. Okay? That's how seriously God took it. All right? All right, verses 44 to 47. For I am the Lord your God. Ye shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and ye shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall ye defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. For I am the Lord that bringeth you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. Ye shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the beast, and of the fowl, and of every living creature that moveth in the waters, and of every creature that creepeth upon the earth, to make a difference between the unclean and the clean, and between the beasts that may be eaten and the beasts that may not be eaten. Okay? So, basically, God claims the right to speak to every area of our life. every area of our life, including what we eat. All right? He had the right to tell Israel what they could eat and what they could not eat. And one great purpose of the dietary laws was to consecrate them. Right? Consecrating means that they were set apart. Right? They're set apart from the Gentile nations. It made fellowship with those who did not serve God a lot more difficult. They weren't allowed to be around these type of things. And not only did the unclean animals defile the children of Israel spiritually, but it was also a hygienic defilement. Now, as you look through history, Israel was spared a lot of diseases and a lot of plagues because of their kosher diet. And kosher just means that it was considered clean. Okay? God had a claim to the obedience of the people of Israel because he was their redeemer. He said, I freed you from Egypt. You spent 400 years in Egypt, and I freed you from it. So Israel was obligated to God. And they were obligated as well because he was their creator. All right? Some Christians believe that we're under obligation to observe these dietary laws, all right, of the clean and the unclean animal today. Now, if people want to obey the dietary laws of the Levitical law, that's fine. If you want to do it, that's entirely up to you. If you feel convicted to where you can only eat kosher food, that you're not going to eat any unclean animals, that's fine. That's up to you if that's what you want to do. If that's where you feel convicted to do, by all means do it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Of course, this was in the Old Testament. Did things change in the New Testament, or is this just
Things change in the New Testament. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and it's and God said, "Hey, if I make it clean, if I say that it's clean, it's clean." All right. So, but the dietary laws, a lot of these, the clean and unclean animals, a lot of it were for hygienic and health purposes too. You know, it gave an obedience that the children of Israel had to follow. There was obviously the obedience part of it, but it was also the health part of it. Okay? Because back in those days you couldn't tell how well the meat and everything was cooked, so you had a chance of getting sick from some of that stuff that was cooked. Yeah. Yeah. On why it was the Israelites, because they were the children of Israel. They were a part of the Abrahamic covenant. They came down. God made a covenant with Abraham, and it all goes back to the Abrahamic covenant, because that's what the children of Israel were descendants of Abraham. So that's why they were the ones that were favored, because they were in that covenant rather than everybody else. Hey? Oh no. Yeah.
It had to be stored in something inside those.
It had to be, they had to protect it and take care of it, you know. And and that's why. Okay, I got a few minutes, but that's why I was looking at the history of how cats came to be, with people on that, and it's all because of it. It didn't happen. Cats did not become domesticated until man started becoming a farming. We started farming instead of hunter gatherers when we went to an agricultural culture and people were storing grains. Well, the mice would come in and these wild cats would come in because, hey, it's free, easy way to get food, and that's how it became. That's how they became domesticated.
What they call a barn cat.
Yeah, yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, they didn't have the stuff that we have today. Okay. Yeah, yeah. All right. Uh, Second, this issue was settled once and for all at the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15, as far as the clean and unclean animals. Can we eat the clean and unclean animals? In Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council settled this issue once for all. It was determined that obedience to the law of Moses was not required as a follower of Jesus. All right? So we're not obligated to the law of Moses in regards to, as I said, which laws we were talking about, but the dietary laws, the sacrificial laws. Okay? In fact, Paul told the Colossians in 2:16, "Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink." In other words, eat what you want. If you want to go out and eat some, camel, go ahead and eat it. That's fine. If you want a camel steak, a camel burger, you eat a camel burger. All right? Okay. So Christians are pretty much well free to eat or not to eat, whatever they please. Okay? And nobody should ever think of themselves as being more right with God because they eat or don't eat certain things. All right? Because, again, if you want to follow the dietary laws of the Mosaic Law, by all means, do so. In fact, you'll probably feel better and healthier in the process of it. All right? But as for me, I ain't giving up bacon. I ain't giving up bacon. I ain't giving up sausage. Okay, I ain't giving up fried catfish. So it's I'm not giving up shrimp or anything like that. But if you don't want to eat those things because the law says that you can't eat it, by all means, knock yourself out. Okay, more for me, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, 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 yeah. There it is. But it's not eating kosher or not eating kosher that gets you closer to God. That's not what it is. Eh? And these, while they were something, while some of the reasons for this were obviously health and hygienic reasons why they did that, why God did that, what it boils down to is the main reason it was an obedience test to God. Okay? It's kind of like he's given the second set of law. Like we said at the very beginning, the first commandment that he gave regarded what they could eat. So he's kind of going, okay, I'm giving you another chance to follow what I say you can and can't eat here. All right? So that's kind of what it went to. That gets us through chapter 11. Takes us all the way through chapter 11. Next week we'll get into chapter 12. We're getting more into the ceremonial portions of it, purity and impurities, and going from there. Yes.
I've noticed one thing that the devil tried to torment me and tried to attack my body, and tell me I'm dying and this and that, and something my brother did, and all these different things. You know how he does, the devil does. I learned you don't let him do that. You put him under your feet, and he tries to. And I've noticed a lot of preachers, he talks them out of their life.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have that. I'm
Uh-uh.
not going to have no intimidation of the devil trying to attack my body to get me to control me from doing what I got to do. I told the Lord I'd preach no matter what, and I've done it, and I will continue to do it. And you know what? And as a church, you got to do it together. No matter what happens, be strong in God. It's all about Him. And when the closer you get to Him, the easier it is. And I ain't putting up no devil's lies. That's what he does. That's what he does good. He's very good at that. He ain't good at nothing but being mad. And he ain't going to control my life. I don't know about y'all, but I am not going to let him control me.
Yeah.
And he wants to control our pastor here. He wants to stop anything he can, and he's a liar. We're going to put him under our feet. The blood of Jesus applied to the sister, pastor's wife. I can't talk right now, but either way, you know what I mean. We're not going to have it. You hear me?
Yeah.
When we begin to fast and pray, things happen. Believe that it can happen. It's that simple. But we have to do it as a unit, the body of Christ. When they get a hold of that, and we learn that, what can happen in this church?
Yeah.
The glory will fall here. I'm telling you, like they've never seen before. But it's up to us if we want that.
Uh-huh.
And it's here. He's ready. I feel the stirring in this place.
Mm-hmm.
And the devil don't like that, but it's gonna happen anyway.
That's right. That's right.
I believe that with all my heart.
Earlier in 2 Kings, the word talks about a famine that was so great in Samaria that a donkey's head sold for 80 pieces of silver.
Mm-hmm.
And that a little bitty tiny portion of a dove's dung sold for like 5 shekels of silver.
Yeah.
There were Israelites living here.
Oh, yeah.
One, I don't know what happened. God either had to supernaturally provide for them, or they ate the unclean thing to survive, and then, went through the ceremonial uncleanness and all that, or they ate the dove's dung. That would be the only thing they could do, because a dove is not carnivorous, it eats berries.
Uh-huh.
So basically, if they ate that, they were eating berries.
Yeah.
Never really thought about that before, but eating a donkey's head
Yeah.
and paying 80 shekels, that's more than what Jesus was sold for when Judas betrayed him.
Yeah.
80 shekels is an exorbitant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
People were so hungry, they paid that to be able to get that.
Yeah. That's right. And there ain't much meat on a donkey's head. Yeah. They squish real good. All right. Nothing else? The pastor dismisses.
Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this now that you've read.
Thank you for joining us today. We pray you were blessed by the broadcast. If you have a prayer request or questions about Solid Rock Tabernacle, please visit our website at www.solidrocktabernacle.com.